Not long ago, a cinematic short film demanded a director. It needed a camera crew and a massive budget. You needed complex lighting knowledge for it to look acceptable. In 2026, it requires a standard laptop, you just need a solid prompt and some basic patience. And you need about 30 minutes of focused time. Welcome to our deep dive today. We're unpacking a fascinating new workflow guide right now. It's called Mastering Text-to-Video AI in 2026. We're moving far past the early software hype today. We really want to unpack the actual daily production workflow. We're going to explore 3 core foundations of AI video. These foundations separate inconsistent outputs from true pro-level cinematic films. Beat. It's just a massive shift in creative power.
Yeah, it really is a completely new paradigm for creators. We're seeing an absolute explosion in AI video lately. Creators are producing stunning short films every single day. They're making high-end branded ads right from their bedrooms. They do all of this without a single physical camera. The creative landscape has shifted dramatically in 12 short months. But there's a brutal truth we actually must face here. Most beginners fail completely when they try these new tools. It isn't because the video software is actually bad. It's because they jump in without a structured system. They don't understand how the underlying models actually work.
I actually have to make a vulnerable admission right here. I still wrestle with burning through credits myself sometimes. I just roll the dice and hope for one decent clip. It can be an incredibly frustrating creative process, but that makes a lot of sense when you step back. These tools are incredibly advanced today. So why is our instinct to just type a basic sentence? Why does hitting generate actually set us up to fail completely?
Well, because surface-level prompting lacks any real structural control. You're basically asking a statistical model to guess absolutely everything. It has to guess the complex lighting and the camera lens. It guesses the focal length and the local physics. The compute burden is just incredibly high for the model. It simply cannot hold all those intricate variables perfectly together. When you type text, you open an infinite possibility space. The model traverses a massive high-dimensional latent space very quickly. It tries to resolve random digital noise into clear shapes. Doing that across time in a video is incredibly unstable. You need a multi-step workflow to guide the model safely. You have to actively constrain that infinite possibility space.
So bad results come from missing workflows, not from broken tools.
Right, and that brings us to the first core foundation today. We really have to move beyond just typing simple text prompts. The guide outlines 5 distinct methods in the new workflow. You have to understand these 5 core approaches very deeply.
Let's walk through those 5 specific methods right now. Method 1 is the basic text-to-video we just discussed. This is still highly useful for simple establishing shots. You use it when you just need a quick, static landscape. Method 2 is called image-to-video in the current guide. This is where you start with a static picture first. You lock in the exact composition before you ever animate it.
Exactly, and that eliminates half the guesswork for the model immediately. Generating video from pure text is kind of like sculpting thick smoke. You might shape a perfect face for 1 single second, but the temporal wind immediately blows those delicate features away. An image prompt acts like a sudden flash freeze. It turns that highly unstable smoke into solid digital ice.
You establish the lighting and the exact framing up front. Then you just ask the AI to add the subtle motion, beat. That brings us to method 3 in the guide today. Method 3 is elements-to-video, or ingredients-to-video as some call it. Method 4 focuses specifically on generating accurate lip-sync data.
Yeah.
You absolutely need this if your characters are speaking dialogue. And method 5 is known as video-to-video or motion transfer. That means using real video movement to puppet an AI-generated character. When I look at all these different methods combined, it feels like stacking Lego blocks of data to build a scene. It's so much better than hoping a single prompt works.
That Lego analogy is the absolute perfect way to view it. You're basically assembling a final product from highly discrete pieces. Each individual piece serves a highly specific visual function. You don't ask one block to build the whole entire house. If you do, the AI model is going to hallucinate wildly.
Yeah. So I want to ask about method number 3 specifically. How does moving to something like elements-to-video fundamentally change things? How does it change the control we have over the final shot?
Well, separating visual elements allows you to provide precise direction. You isolate the visual variables completely away from each other. If you generate a character and a background together, they bleed. The AI struggles to understand where the person actually ends.
Right. It lacks true spatial awareness of the digital scene.
It might just blend a green shirt into a green forest. By splitting them apart, you isolate the visual variables completely. You generate your human character on a solid green screen. You generate your highly detailed forest background entirely separately. Then you composite them together in a traditional video editor.
Mixing separate ingredients gives us total control over the final visual recipe.
That's exactly how the top professionals are working right now. But having those 5 methods is pretty much useless without visual consistency. It doesn't matter if you can move a character smoothly. If their face changes every time the camera cuts, you fail. The illusion of your cinematic short film is instantly broken. We call this frustrating phenomenon the cousin effect. Your hero suddenly looks like their own slightly weird cousin. This brings us directly to Foundation 2, which is the consistency playbook.
Consistency is definitely where beginners usually lose their minds entirely. You get one truly great shot of your main hero, then the next shot looks like a completely different person.
Yeah, it is incredibly jarring for the viewer. The guide gives us specific workflow steps to prevent these mistakes. First, you must always build from static images first. You shouldn't ever start your complex workflow with a video.
I guess because images are just incredibly cheap. They're very fast to generate compared to full video.
Exactly. You can iterate on a face dozens of times really quickly. You can explore a vast latent space without burning your budget. Video generation takes longer and costs significantly more compute credits. You really want to lock in the still image before spending resources.
Second, you use your AI-generated output as the new reference point. You feed the good results back into the system continually. You essentially lock the visual seed in place permanently. Third, you must generate environments completely separately from the characters. We touched on this briefly during the isolated ingredients discussion. Fourth, you have to build a master character reference sheet. This is a very specific type of foundational document.
Right, and this is the absolute secret weapon of pro creators. You generate a grid showing your character from multiple distinct angles. You want a clear front profile, a side profile, and a back. You upscale this image grid to lock in the micro details. Then you feed this grid back into your image comp continually.
You set the character weight extremely high in the software. This forces the generative model to anchor onto those specific pixels. And finally, you apply this exact same logic to scene props. It also applies to any supporting characters in your short film. Beat. Whoa. Beat. Imagine generating an entire, persistent cinematic universe from just one character sheet.
It really is a staggering level of creative power today. You're essentially building a digital backlot on your personal computer. You lock in the exact visual identity before you ever animate anything. This stops the generative model from hallucinating completely new details. It has a concrete visual anchor to reference constantly during generation. You completely eliminate that terrifying cousin effect we mentioned earlier.
I need to dig into one specific workflow step right here. Why is it so critical to generate environments completely separately from our characters?
Because AI models really struggle with complex spatial relationships natively, they don't truly understand three-dimensional depth like humans actually do. If you ask for a man in a bustling neon city, the model might start putting neon lights directly on his leather jacket. It gets completely confused by all the overlapping digital noise.
Isolating backgrounds stops the AI from blending everything into total visual chaos.
Exactly. You handle the complex compositing logic yourself later on. You don't force the AI to do complex spatial math.
Okay, let's step back and look at where we are now. We have highly consistent characters and fully locked-in visual environments. We have our master character sheets completely ready to go. The latent space is tightly constrained and fully controlled. So how do we actually get them to move naturally? Foundation 3 says we have to prompt like a film director. We cannot just prompt like a software engineer anymore. We have to think about blocking, pacing, and direct action.
This is where the true cinematic magic really starts happening. The guide breaks down 3 specific directing rules for us. The first rule is all about controlling the pace of motion. You must use the word slow in your text prompts. You have to use it way more than you think you need to.
That feels incredibly counterintuitive at first glance. You want dynamic action, so you naturally ask for fast movement. But the physics engines in AI naturally want to move things way too fast.
Right, and they struggle deeply with subtle temporal consistency. If you ask a character to run quickly across a room, the model has to invent a massive amount of new pixel data rapidly. It usually fails and creates a blurry, chaotic visual mess. Asking for slow motion forces the engine to calculate carefully. It gives the AI time to maintain the rigid structural integrity. You can always speed the footage up in post-production later.
Yeah. Beat, that makes perfect sense when you understand the mechanics. So what is the second critical directing rule from the guide?
You must restate what is already visible in the reference image. If your character is wearing a heavy red leather jacket, you have to type red leather jacket in the animation prompt. You cannot just say, make the man walk forward. You have to consciously remind the AI about the specific clothing.
If I feed the AI an image, why waste prompt space restating visible details?
Well, because the generative model has a strictly finite attention budget. Think of the AI like a highly stressed camera operator. It only has so much compute power for every single frame. Calculating complex motion vectors is mathematically very expensive for the system.
It has to calculate exactly how an arm swings through space.
Exactly. As it calculates the complex math of a moving arm, it spends 90% of its attention budget right there. It sometimes drops the data about the red jacket entirely. It prioritizes the new motion vector over the existing visual stability. It'll literally hallucinate a generic gray t-shirt to save processing power.
It just completely forgets what the character is currently wearing.
Yeah, it takes the path of least computational resistance. Restating the details forces the AI to actively focus during generation. It preserves those specific visual elements during the actual motion. You essentially force it to allocate its attention budget properly.
Repeating visual details forces the AI to remember exactly what it's animating.
Precisely. You become a strict director managing a stressed camera crew. And that brings us to the third critical directing rule today. You must stick to very simple, highly isolated physical actions. You only want 1 or 2 clear actions per shot. You don't ask the character to walk, talk, and drink coffee simultaneously.
The attention budget would just completely crash.
Exactly. The AI model would panic and melt the image entirely. You have to break those complex actions down into individual camera shots. Shot 1 is just the character walking slowly through the door. Shot 2 is a tight close-up of them taking a sip of coffee. Shot 3 is them delivering the actual spoken dialogue.
This drastically reduces the cognitive load on the AI model. It ensures each individual segment looks as realistic as mathematically possible.
Right, and that's exactly how real film directors work anyway. They build complex scenes through a sequence of highly controlled shots. They don't capture the entire movie in one chaotic take. They manage the variables on set to guarantee a perfect outcome. By limiting the variables in your prompt, you guarantee a much higher success rate. You basically stop rolling the dice and hoping for a lucky generation.
Which brings us to the massive overarching takeaway from all this. The 2026 AI video gold rush isn't about the software you use. Every single creator essentially has access to the exact same foundational tools. The latent space is available to absolutely everyone with a laptop. It's really about the intense discipline of your daily creative workflow.
That's the absolute core theme of this entire deep dive today. You really have to treat AI like a highly structured physical film set. You cannot just treat it like a magical text box anymore. You use static generated images as your initial rigid storyboards. You build deeply detailed reference sheets for your strict visual continuity. You direct the entire computational system with slow and very simple actions.
You stop relying on lucky generations and magical one-shot prompts. Beat. You essentially transform from a prompt guesser into an actual director. You take total control of the underlying mathematical system.
And that transformation is what truly separates the amateurs from the pros. Anyone can generate a random, morphing 5-second video clip today, but directing a cohesive, visually perfect narrative requires a deeply structured system. It requires immense patience, careful planning, and a deep understanding of the medium. You have to understand latent space, attention budgets, and complex motion vectors. It's a completely new craft that demands serious artistic respect.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We want to leave you with a very simple challenge today. Try taking just one of these new structured workflow steps. Try building a solid, multi-angle character reference sheet first. Do this before you ever hit generate video again. Build that crucial visual foundation before you try to build a whole house. Lock down your digital actor before you force them to perform.
It'll truly save you so much frustration and wasted time. You'll finally feel like you're actually in control of the creative process. You'll stop fighting the AI and start directing it properly.
If anyone can manifest a perfect cinematic short in 30 minutes, 2-sec silence, it leaves you wondering, when technical barriers completely vanish, will human taste be the only thing left? Will that be what makes a director valuable? Something to think about.
Oh, Tierra music.